What is happening, Bigger Pockets family? It's Matt Faircloth. I am so honored to be here with you guys. Join me every Monday at noon Eastern Standard Time because I've been doing these live shows. We've had lots of great interviews lately. I've had, I've had Jay Scott on. I'm just thinking about Amanda Hahn came on and talked to him. And Amanda Hahn, if you guys haven't watched that interview, by the way, watch the Amanda Hahn show that I did with her a few weeks ago on the Bigger Pockets Facebook page or on Bigger Pockets on YouTube, because we talked about a lot of great stuff coming down the pipeline with regards to the PPP loan, with regards to a lot of other a lot of programs that the government is providing to support real estate investors. Great conversation. We need to have her back on, by the way. So that's there. My wife did a phenomenal interview for any women watching. My wife did a great show with three Bigger Pockets with Mindy, Amanda Kerr, and with Carol Scott last Monday, talking about just balancing momhood, balancing being a business owner. It was a phenomenal conversation. I watched a lot of it on my cell phone while I was watching our kids and being a dad for a bit. And that while Liz was able to spend some time with you guys. So these Monday programs have been great. We've interviewed a lot of great talent that Bigger Pockets has, folks that have really been able to give their time and talents to you guys to help educate your real estate investing careers. And this is no different. I've got a great guest. Before we get to this awesome guest we're going to have, and it's so timely because a lot of you guys want to achieve financial independence. A lot of you guys want to retire early. We're talking about how you can still do that given the changing world that we're in. You cannot miss the show. Whether you guys are watching the recording or live, stay tuned because we're going to have an awesome guest and a great conversation. But before we get there, I want you guys to take a minute. Take a minute and give this thing a thumbs up. Give this video a thumbs up right now. Like it, because that tells Facebook, it tells YouTube, hey, Facebook and YouTube, I like that video. And that means that you guys should share it with more people. That's what that really does, because it feeds the algorithm, and the algorithm says, hey, more people like this, and we should propagate it and show it to more and more people, because we need to make more people aware of the awesome stuff that Bigger Pockets does. More people need to watch this so they can achieve financial independence too, and more people need to get tuned into the message that BP has and all the great stuff that BP's up to. So take a minute right now, like it, right? While we're doing that, while you get your fingers on your keyboard and you guys are liking this thing, do me a favor and type in a big shout out, talk about where you're from, okay? Because I want to give some shout outs during the video to all my people that are live. Few shout outs already. I got Raul from Columbus, Ohio. Welcome, Raul. I got Verna from Memphis, Tennessee, walking in Memphis. Good. I won't sing it for you, but that's a great song. And Hello Wade is helloing Mr. Faircloth. Hello to you. Don't call me Mr. Faircloth, man. You can just call me Matt. It's okay. So keep those shout outs going. One more. Alexandra from West Palm Beach, Florida. What is the weather like in West Palm Beach, Florida? That's what I want to know. Just make us all jealous real quick, Alexandra. And I got Aaron in Indianapolis and Frankie up in New York. Of course, Frankie Rizzo is from New York. Where else would somebody named Frankie Rizzo be from? Ruben and Lynn and Jamie, all these shout outs, man. I'll keep the shout outs coming, man. You guys keep your tags going. It's blowing up. Thank you for all you people being on here, and a few YouTubers watching. We got Jay, we got Mia, I got John. I've got lots of people. Wait, hang on. I got Jason from Taipei, Taiwan joining us. Thank you, Jason, for watching us for overseas. We always get a great international crowd. Here's a high five. Bow. Okay. Now, before we get any further, Frankie from New York's now talking trash. I love it. Cool. By the way, let's keep those coming. I'll keep the shout outs coming in, but I want to bring in our guests because we've got a great conversation. You guys need to stay for the whole interview. I need you guys to stick around for this. Fire in lots of great questions because this is such a relevant conversation for where we are today. Now, I want to tell you guys, I met Chad Carson at the Bigger Pockets conference last year, and I immediately just had affinity for this guy, even though he is a Clemson athlete. That's okay, because I went to Virginia Tech. We're arch rivals, not really arch rivals, but we play each other, and Clemson tends to hand it to us every when we do play because they're an awesome team in that. So, guys, I just bring in like a virtual round of applause, big thumbs up, and big hearts right now for my guest today, Chad Carson. Bring him on in, Chad. Come on in.
Hello, everybody.
Cool.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, how are you? How are you, man? Great to see
Good.
you. Good to see you again. It's good to see your smiling face, man. How you been?
It's been very well, doing well, and it's been a long time since Bigger Pockets conference last year, right?
I know, I know, I know, I know. Feels like a billion years ago, doesn't it? It was only a couple months ago, really. It was really just
I
October,
know.
which wasn't that long ago, but it does
Uh,
feel like a billion years ago these days, doesn't it?
Quarantine like extends time and warps time, right?
We're in the quarantine vortex, I like to
Yeah.
call it, that it just makes everything longer. Cool. So tell me, man, I want to encourage our viewers to do this too. A lot of people are talking about where they're from. I'm going to keep throwing them a few shout outs. By the way, I got Mitch from Delray. I got Pete from Massachusetts. And that I want you to do this first and encourage our listeners to do this. Tell me one great thing that's come up for you personally, business, whatever it is, Chad, as a direct result of this COVID. Too many people, don't you agree, are focused on all the bad that's going on and all that. And I don't want to discount the bad that's happening, but let's talk about the great things that are happening too, because something good
Yeah.
stuff's happening. Give me some highlights, some good news, man. Give me something good that's happened in your life.
Yeah, I actually give you two of them. One's real estate related, one's personal. And just for everybody who doesn't know me, I live in Clemson, South Carolina. So it's a small college town. I have multi-unit properties there, small multi-unit family, and some single family houses. And so one of the good real estate things for us, especially early in March, things were kind of getting a little bit, everybody's getting a little nervous. What's going to happen? Are people going to pay rent? One of the positives of that, I think it took us back to paying attention to the numbers and to our books and to the fundamentals of this financial analysis. Because sometimes I don't know, maybe everybody doesn't do this, but you get go, you're acquiring properties, you're looking at other things, and it's not always like paying attention to those small details. Like, what are my real expenses right now? And how much cash flow am I actually making? And I think that's been a positive for me, is just to go back to those basics of cash flow. This is like football, right? Running, blocking, tackling, real estate's what it's all about. So that's been positive.
Get into that next first down. I got it right. Stop worrying about winning the trophies and start talking about just getting to the next play. I love the football analogy. Yeah.
So that's the real estate one. And I mean, personally, the quarantine, obviously, for people in different areas of the country has been a lot harder. We've been a little, more tame here, but just being at home, and my kids are at home, and being able to pay attention to what they're doing at school as they're kind of helping them along the side and having picnics at lunch. Those have been some of the positives, just personally, through our family experience.
How old are your kids?
So I have a 7 and a 9-year-old, two daughters. And
okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
We've done a lot of traveling together. That's what kind of this early retirement conversation. We've traveled to internationally to Ecuador and done some things like that. But even this experience has been much more focused and just tons and tons of time together, for better or worse. And that's been a real, just getting to know your family better. Just what makes them tick, what are they interested in? What do they do at school? What do they like to read? So those kind of things have been fun.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and it's been that way as well. And a lot of it's just dealing with what you deal with the 6 and 3, stuff like temper tantrums and that kind of thing, and just getting to connect with your kids emotionally and bring them back down, and just learn how to handle them on a 24-hour-a-day basis, which, we get schools, you get to, kind of get them out of the house a little bit, everything like that, which is good for, you can focus on the business, but being able to focus on the business and the kids and balancing everything all at once is a feat, man. My wife and I, we're going to take a road trip. We're renting an RV, and we're going to throw the kids in the RV and do a little bit of time on the road and see how we like it together. And if the small trip goes well, we're going to take a big RV trip. If the small, if we can handle it, which I think we'll be fine. But I want to make sure my kids can handle leaving a lot of their, call it like amenities here at the house, like leaving that, let's leave all of our conveniences here and have a few less conveniences in exchange for getting to see some really cool stuff.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Sometimes when you travel or get an RV, it sort of simplifies things, which has been another thing about the quarantine. Like, hey, you can't go anywhere. It's like you eat a meal, you hang out as a family, and so I bet that would be amazing. Just getting to see what's going on, just see the world and explore it through their eyes.
Yeah. A few of our viewers, man, have some shout outs, man. Just throw out to Michael. Michael's just saying that that because, and I think a lot of people would agree that because of COVID and because of this whole thing, a blessing. And Michael's got like, I think it's Grand Canyon right there in his picture, talking about travel, right? But Michael's talking about how this has allowed him to work from home, not missing a 2-hour daily commute. I can remember growing up, my dad drove 2 hours one way to work.
Wow.
Just to sit in an office and do things you likely could have done from home these days, and that. So I think that America's figuring out that we can work from home a lot more than we used to, which is really awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Michael. So let's get down to the nitty gritty, man. You wrote a book, for Bigger Pockets, which you have a copy of it there. Show it off.
There it is.
Retire Early with Real Estate. And it was a great book. When it was written, then a couple, would you write that a year? Was it published 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years ago. That's right.
Okay. Yeah. And if folks wanted to pick up a copy of that, of course they can go to Amazon on that, but I mean, they want to buy it from Bigger Pockets because they get a bunch of, throw-ins and amenities and stuff like that. So where do they go to buy that book on Bigger Pockets?
You can just go to the Bigger Pockets store, and I know one of the buttons there towards the top has the book, and it was really cool. Part of the bonuses on Bigger Pockets, I got to interview a lot of different people, but I interviewed one of my mentors from Florida, John Schaub, and he's an investor who's been in Sarasota, Florida for 40 years now investing, and so it was really cool to hear the perspective, particularly now with the recession. It was a little bit before the recession then, but potential of a recession and things going on. Somebody's been in the business for 40 years, and to get their perspective on early retirement and financial independence and how do you do this and what things have changed and what things haven't changed. So people can check that interview out, and some others as well that were very, very interesting.
That's great. That's great. Now, I highly recommend you guys check out Chad's book. And what I want to get into today with you, and we've already got some questions popping in, Chad, so this is going to be a good one. If y'all have questions for Chad already, type them in. I'll fire off as many of them as we can. But I also want to, I want to get a personal question. I think a lot of people just will generally want to know, you've really focused a lot of the conversation on how to retire early. America has been trained that we got to work until we're 65 and then we retire, and we live off the equation is live off of less, less income, get yourself debt free so you can live off of less income and just kind of slowly bleed down your 401k over your retirement years. Now, you've really flipped that model upside down in your book. With an equation on how to retire early with real estate, kind of in line with the FIRE movement and everything else, which is financial independence, retire early. So great book, a lot of big followings on it and that, but how has that, do you believe, and if so, how has it changed? How have things changed given the pending recession we're going into, given COVID, anything else that you want to offer up that's changed the dynamic on how people who have still set the goal on retiring early, right. What can they do now? What are some things they should be focusing on that are new elements to the equation?
It's a good question. I definitely want to talk about some of the changes that we need to be aware of. I think as all real estate investors, but particularly if you're retiring early or have that aspiration. But I think it's good to point out too, that I bet a lot of us, as we've come into this, when you have a time of crisis or change or things are you have upheaval, it makes you, at least for me, it makes you step back and say, what actually matters in my life? Like what am I doing all this real estate investing for? What am I working my job for to make money? Why am I saving money? And that was really the premise of the whole book, was to step back first and say, what matters to you personally? And that's gonna vary. Every one of us has a different definition, which is fascinating. It's fun to hear what matters to other people. But if you start from that premise and say, hey, you know what? Like, I'm just kind of tired of every single day going to the job, even though I like this job, even though I like my career, I don't have control over my day-to-day time. Like, I don't have, when I wake up in the morning, I can't just decide to do this and this and this. And that's an issue of money. Like, it's not like the money side of the equation is, it might not be easy, but it's not really complicated. It's essentially, you've got to save up enough money, or you got to build enough wealth, particularly with real estate, which is our sphere. You've got to build enough wealth so that you can then live off that wealth. That's really, that's the basics. It's not very complicated. Even if you have a small amount of money right now, you've got to save up the money. You got to invest it. you got to grow it. And so the how to, like what we can talk about now with the recession coming up, like the how to, there's a lot of different paths up that mountain to try to get enough wealth to retire off of it. Real estate, I happen to think is like, it has so many more advantages over a lot of other ways, just purely investing in stocks and those sorts of things. But real estate is changing a little bit now because real estate has cycles. And so we're probably on the downside of a cycle. It's probably getting to the point where, things are going to be a little harder to sell properties, perhaps, who knows? It's kind of hard to tell at this point. But I think that the only thing that changes from a technical standpoint, one of the do is just make sure you have backup plans. Like you don't want to back yourself in a corner and say, hey, I'm going to live off this amount of money. Here's how much wealth I have. Here's how much income I have. And that's the only plan I have. You got to have, I think that's a misconception a lot of people have when they're thinking about retirement 30 years out or 5 years out, is that you can't just have one plan. You got to have a plan A, you got to have a plan B, you got to have a plan C, especially when the market changes and there's unknowns like we're going through right now.
I find what works is to agree with you is that you've got, this is where I want to go, right? Maybe see how I'd summarize it and maybe not just agree with you, but just summarize it in my own words. This is where I want to go. This is what I want, this out, horizon out here. And here's the 3 different ways I can get there. So that could be doing BRRRR strategy investing. That could be doing some passive investing with other folks that are operators. Or that could be maybe doing some flips, or if you wholesales or whatever to make chunks of cash. Just made those up. Those don't have to be your vehicles, let's say, to financial freedom. But as long as each of those lanes of vehicles can take you where you want to go, they're all viable. And I agree that it's good to have a few different ways to get there, if you will, because just so that like things like right now, if they show up, like another recession or another whatever, if one lane starts to get harder to travel, you can pick up other angles of attack that you have to get you where you want to go.
Yep, exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
cool. Frankie wants to know. I'll just throw it out there. I've got some thoughts on this, but if you want to hop on, what do you recommend for military veterans like myself who aspire to invest in multifamily house hacking, rehabbing to achieve financial freedom? So, Frankie, first of all, thank you for your service to the country as a veteran.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, what do you recommend for Frankie, Chad? What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I talked about in the book is that, let's go back to our mountain metaphor that Matt and I are both using. Like as you get closer to the top of the mountain, your strategies are going to change. But you mentioned house hacking. Like when you're first starting, you just got to get your foot in the door. And for me and a lot of people on Bigger Pockets who've been investors for a while, house hacking was one of the great entryways into investing. And so like if you're a veteran, you have one of the best loan programs out there, the VA loan, that has low interest rates, long-term 30-year kind of loan. It has 0 down payment in some, in a lot of cases. So using that VA loan, Frankie, is like where I would, that's where I'd start my thinking was, all right, I've got financing available. Let me go get qualified. Let me see how I can qualify and then find out what those requirements are. And, that's one piece of the puzzle, the financing. The other piece is the property itself. And I'm sure Matt and I could have a lot to say on that, but you gotta mix and match those two, the money and the right property. And if you put those together, then you can have a situation where you have the rent from your house hack paying for your housing bills and where you can live for free. That's amazing.
Yeah. And Frankie, I know a bunch of folks that are fresh out of the military or just have access to that VA loan, which is which is such a phenomenal product. And it's one of the thank yous our government has created for folks that have served as you have. And that as Chad said, it's pretty much 0% down money. I don't know, again, I'm not a mortgage loan officer, Chad, I don't know if you know anything about this either, but I don't know if you can use that VA loan for reno or not. As you would like a 203K loan or an FHA. Right. Chad, do you know if you can use that for reno?
I haven't seen that lately, but yeah,
I don't either. But that's okay. It's something to look into, Frankie. I think either way, whether you're buying a renovated property or a property that needs a little bit of work, you have to shop a little bit, given where you are. I believe up in the greater New York area, because a lot of those properties can be higher priced. I happen to know, living not too far from there, I would look across the water in New Jersey. In North Jersey, there's a lot of up and coming areas and a lot of areas where you can get yourself into a small multi. With that VA loan, you can buy, you can buy a single family home, but you can also buy a duplex, triplex, or even a quad. And that's a slam dunk. If you can find yourself, Frankie, a quadruplex on a VA loan, think about it. You're 0 money down. you're walking right into a 4-family where you've got 3 tenants that are paying you rent. You live in 1 unit. I know several folks that are in situations like that where they're actually living there, but also cash flowing. How crazy is that, Chad? They're able to make money while you flip the living model upside down.
And a big part of retiring early too is just saving money. So if you can live for free when you would have been paying $1,200 or $1,500 in rent somewhere, you've now flipped the whole equation where, what can you do with that $1,500? You could start saving that for your next remodel or your next property, and then move out of this property a year or two later and just keep going. I mean,
there's a timeline. You don't have to live there for 30 years. There's a timeline that you could roll it over and get another one. I mean, I would consult with a few vets. Looks like a few of them are piping in here. Casey just wanted to let you know, Frankie, that the VA loan program does allow reno. Chad, would probably be similar to the, amount of paperwork you got to do to get a 203K loan, as I've heard. But you can get it done. I mean, I know several people that have used 203K loans and been able to get properties renovated. So Casey's saying you can do it. Thank you for your contribution, Casey, to the channel here and to helping Frankie out. So, so Chad, changing it back up, what opportunities do you think? I mean, we talked about some kind of staying on mission, keeping climbing the mountain and everything like that. Given a pending recession, what pivot points do you think that people should be making, going into, as things start to open back up, we start to maybe dip our toe in the water and get back into business and everything like that. What pivot points for opportunity? Let's talk about 2 pivot point for opportunities that people should look for, and maybe pitfalls, like opportunities and pitfalls. Do you think that people could look could look for when stepping forward into building their wealth for retirement?
Yeah. So in terms of opportunities, I was investing in 2003, 4, and 5, 6, right before the last recession. So a lot of the mistakes I made going into there really come to mind for me. But I mean, we don't know exactly what this recession is going to look like. We probably know it's not going to be exactly like the last one.
Nope.
But in general, recessions tend to present more opportunities for purchases where you can get them below the full value. So I think just looking for opportunities and, not changing your approach. Like if you're a burr investor, if you're a house hacker, if you're just a buy and hold investor, like I don't see any reason to change approach at all. The change is focus on your same locations, but be more conservative on your numbers and start looking for cash flow. Some of y'all have been cash flow starved for years, where you're always having to look at the future growth and what's going on. And I'm more of a cash flow investor. I think it's like cash flow first. I benefit a lot from appreciation. Those are great. I force appreciation on my properties, but this is an opportunity to buy cash flow. Like look for those deals where you can have a reasonable amount of cash flow, because to me, that's really the engine that's going to help you save more money for the next deal. It's going to be the engine that's going to help you pay debt off eventually if you want to go that route. So, I think cash flow is an opportunity. So looking for that. And pitfalls, though, I think being too aggressive, you don't have to be right on time in a recession. I learned that in 2008 and 9 as well. There's like a bunch of echoes of opportunity over and over again, waves of opportunity afterwards. And real estate's not like the stock market where things just fall off a cliff. You better buy it like this minute or you're going to miss that opportunity. Real estate takes months at a minimum, sometimes years to respond to changes. And so I think we're just being patient at this point and definitely looking for properties, but you don't have to get in right now. You can start looking hard, being conservative, making offers. But you have a different take on that, Matt? You have any thoughts? No,
I love that. I mean, remember I was investing I quit my job in 2005. And so 5, 6, 7, I was right along. I didn't know you at the time, but I was right along with you, man. Just building it up and made every mistake in the book. It made me a lot smarter. Gave me a few of my grays, but it made me a lot smarter back then in that. And I tried to force a square peg into a round hole in a lot of that 2008, 2009 timeframe, right? And just what I've learned now is that you got to read the market. Somebody gave me something brilliant. You cannot control the market. You can only hope to participate in it. And that's brilliant. You're not going to force it. So just see where the market's going and try and just swim like a fish along with it and build and find a way to advance your goals given the market. Don't just make the try and force the market to the goals that you have. Right. And so I think that's great. I think that's the pitfall I would list, is going against the grain, because the grain will eat you alive. The opportunity you listed on cash flow, I think, is brilliant. And I would underscore that too. Few ones. Juanita wants to know, hey, Chad, please remind investors not to over renovate just because you have time. Spend some time on your next move, right? So I don't know if you know this person, but yeah, go ahead. Comment on that.
No, that's I think she was reading my mind, because that was the other mistake I made in 2007, 8 was buying properties that we underestimated repair cost, or not necessarily over renovating, but just sometimes you can make a big mistake by underestimating some of your costs in a recession, and times where you just buy. So I think looking for more quality properties. If you're going to buy a renovation right now, a huge renovation, like, it needs to have a lot of meat on that bone. It needs to be a really good deal, because things are changing so fast too. So I think look for opportunities where you don't have to necessarily have like a really long remodel time frame. Get in and out, get it done. Things are moving fast, so just kind of move to Matt's point. You gotta go with the market, and as things start moving faster, you got to adjust your strategy a little bit to make sure it's adapting to the market.
To add on to that, and we did a flip one time, and it was like a $250,000 market. And it was a good deal that we got, but we put in like the bathroom that we did had this, like, we just decided, hey, we'll just, flex our muscles a little bit. And we did this rainwater, like shower thing with like the side jets and the top thing and all that. It was sick. It was awesome. But you did not need that in a $250,000 house. And that did not up our price or up our marketability or anything. We could have stopped short and saved probably $3-4 grand that it took to put in the beautiful rainwater thing, right? Real cool, and we had the material for cheap, and when the plumber knew how to do it, and it came out nice. It was gorgeous. It was good bragging rights, but didn't put any money in our pocket. So I think that an up market can be extremely forgiving, right? But a down market can be extremely penalizing in instances like that. And I think that what it pays to do is to know exactly where the line of diminishing returns is on a reno. To know, okay, if you're renovating a rental, do I need to put in stainless steel, or could I do black appliances or even white appliances? Research your market. Look to see what your competitors are getting in rents and what their finishes look like. Even go walk a unit, whatever it is, whatever you can do to really read the market and determine where that line is, and don't cross it. Don't cross the line of diminishing returns, and put in if your market doesn't call for ceiling fans, don't do it. If it doesn't call for, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add, the other thing that is wise about what Juanita's recommending there is just cash management. To your point, like if you don't want to over renovate for timing, for also just because you're not going to get the return on investment, but also in a recession, cash is really important. For your defensive position, just to make sure if things got really bad in a worst case scenario, you want to be able to ride out the storm. But even for opportunities, like if there's going to be some opportunities in the next 6 months, 9 months, you don't want to spend every bit on, you don't want to get into a deal where you're throwing an extra 20-30 grand into a renovation that you underestimated. So I think but your point's really smart about just, being efficient with that, making sure that the finishes are right, but also just on the front end, when you're looking at different deals, you can be selective now. You don't have to take on the biggest one that has the most complication. You can look for some deals maybe that have less complication, especially depending on what level of investor you are, but where they're more of a bread and butter deal, but you're still getting it below value. I think that's more what I'm looking for in this kind of market.
Got it. I got a great name for your next book, which would be, and let's call it like the football of real estate investing, right? And that, because you've made a few analogies, right? Defense, offense, things like that. I think the Bigger Pockets audience would love those analogies, not just the guy football fans, but I love analogies when it comes to, it makes things relatable. Like, okay, well, here's how offense looks like in real estate investing. This is what defense looks like in real estate investing. And this is what, you got to focus on and everything like that. Not that you have to relate everything to football, but it does. It's a way for people to get their head around it, and analogies tend to simplify things. So,
I like basketball even better. I got the football
There
helmet,
you
but
go.
I'm a pickup basketball guy. So any basketball
Okay.
players out there? I usually ask
Cool.
that when I'm in a chat. Like,
Sure, why
shout out.
not? Yeah, yeah. Any basketball players, give us some bragging rights and give us some shout outs and stuff like that. Okay, real quick, Letty, what is your opinion of investing platforms such as Fundrise, Realty Mogul, or CrowdStreet? If somebody's looking to invest passively, and that is part of their investing goals, Letty wants to know with regards to passive investments. What do you think, Chad?
I think for the right person and the right situation, yeah. I'm not a super big fan because I think here's the thing, like the frame I'm not a big fan of is I think some of these are marketed as push button, easy, get in without much work.
It's like buying a stock, right?
It's like buying a stock, right?
Just buy an apartment building, point and click.
Yeah. And so buying an index fund where you have 4,000 companies and you're well diversified is much different than buying in a limited partnership where you really got to do your homework. And so I think that's one of the biggest misnomers. I love the new Bigger Pockets book that's coming out on passive investing and how you really have to do some work at it. You can't just jump in there. And so I think if you follow those rules, if you read a book like that where you really study the fundamentals and you study the partner you're getting into the business with, and in the case of Realty Mogul or CrowdStreet, I mean, I think there's some opportunities there, but just know yourself and know, like for many people I talked to on Bigger Pockets, they're getting into direct investing, and buying one or two properties is, it can be very passive too. And so I'm more of a fan of that. But I think there's a time and place for diversification and for passive investing and like a retirement fund or something to go into those as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good diversification tool, but that's about it. And also, I believe, because I've looked at a lot of those deals, it's very easy. Not saying people will do this, but it's very easy to manipulate the numbers and make a deal on those platforms look really, really cool. And the deal might actually be a pig, but I can just change one or two little parameters and make the deal look phenomenal. And I've seen that happen. As you mentioned, Brian Burke's book, The Hands-Off Real Estate Investor, is a phenomenal book. And I've read the transcript of it, everything like that. And I think that, and he was on the show. He was here a couple weeks ago. So you guys should watch that interview to hear more about it. We'll have to get Brian back in a couple weeks too. More questions. Everybody's wanting to hear from you here. Let's see. Darius wants to know, hey, Chad, can you discuss the pros and cons of properties in an LLC versus personal name for earners over $100,000? What approach would you take? And Darius is a Florida investor. First of all, Darius, you should talk to a Florida attorney in that, because I don't believe Chad and I are attorneys in the state of Florida. But I think Chad and I would gladly offer our opinions on that matter. Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, let's just list some pluses and minuses. I mean, for many of you, when you're first starting, like we were talking about house hacking earlier, I mean, if you're going to buy an owner-occupied property where you move in, that's your personal name. That's just a normal thing to do. And really, for a lot of people, like, I'm not going to tell you what you should do or shouldn't do. I'm just going to tell you what a lot of people do when they're first getting a property and they're getting a traditional loan, a conventional loan. They often put it in their own name because you have to do that to get the loan. Like, it's just a practical purpose. That's the plus. Like, to get the loan, you got to have it in your name first and foremost. And also, I would just add beyond that, there's so many things to worry about as a real estate investor. You got all these ideas and things you got to pay attention to. And sometimes you just got to go back. Here's another sports analogy. You got to go back to the fundamentals, the basics, like what's important. What important is you buy a good property in a good location with the numbers that make sense, in an area that might have some growth potential. Like, I would focus on that. And I would get really good. I have a good team around me. I'd have a good insurance agent who can help me get really good liability insurance. And I mean, if you take care of all that, that's not saying you shouldn't have an LLC. And you talk to an attorney and they can help you put that together. But over time, that's a good thing to think about. But when you're doing I think your first deal or two, just focus on the fundamentals, get a good deal, make sure you have good insurance, and then grow from there.
You get that sports talk in your veins, man. You got to write that book. Write that book, man. I'm going to call Bigger Pockets Publishing and say, hey, Chad's got an idea, man.
We got it.
Let's see. By the Casey challenges you to a pickup game. I'm just letting you know.
All right. All right, Casey. How tall are you, Casey? I gotta like qualify that.
Right. Size him up. Right. Yeah. Cool. Aaron wants to know, I don't know if you want to chime in on this one or not. Aaron wants to know, which property management program do you recommend for 20 doors and under? Talking about what Aaron's talking about. I'll preface it for, I know you, Chad, know what Aaron's talking about here, but for everybody else, property management program are softwares that tend to do a lot of your bookkeeping, financial analysis, profit and loss statements, and and the good ones will tend to handle rent collections, meaning like ACHs and billing tenants, work order collections. Some of them can do and stuff like that. So there's a lot of robust platforms out there. Chad, what do you recommend?
Well, I'm actually curious to hear what Matt uses as well, because I don't think that before, but I have a couple different solutions that we use personally. And so my wife and I own a couple rentals on our own outside of our business, and we use cozy.co for those.
Yep.
So it's real simple. It's free. I know that, I've known the people behind the business for a long time and like them and trust them. So that's a really good one. And it's a lot of this smaller landlords in particular use those. For our other business, for our main business, we have about 110 units, and we used to self-manage all of those. And so we used Buildium as an online software, and it's more robust, has more systems, and allowed us to like take a lot of the systems and operations of our business, like maintenance and work, invoicing and those kinds of things. And it just built it all in together. But so we're still using that a little bit. But we've actually offloaded a lot of our management to third-party managers at this point. So I think in the next 6 months, we're probably going to move on from that, just because we only have a few that we're managing ourselves.
I got it. There's a lot of lessons in property management. There's not a whole lot of money in it, right? So,
right. Yeah.
I believe that every investor should manage themselves for a little bit, so they can learn how to do it and learn the ropes and not get taken by a property management company. Make a few contacts, and that's so you're not left barren. If your PM goes up or goes belly up, and you got to take it under your own wing, I recommend that everyone should manage for a little while themselves. I did it, got up to 100 units or so with my own team. And then we paired it off to a third party PM, and that scaled a lot of our growth. Now, to Aaron's question with regards to software, as Chad said, cozy.co is where to go. That's really cool. The founders or owners of Cozy. I'd love to hear more about that offline, but Cozy is a good getting started software. It's affordable, if not free. And so they're not going to do like a lot of more in-depth stuff like work order generation and everything. We don't need all that. You can grow into the need as you build your portfolio. But if you're 20 units or less, cozy.co is where you want to be. When we did management, we were using Rent Manager at first. Then we used Appfolio. I think Appfolio is a great software. And by the way, Aaron, the reason why cozy.co you should like is because what Chad mentioned, Buildium, Appfolio, all those other softwares that are out there, Yardi, all of them, all have a guaranteed minimum, right? So you get to pay a couple $100 a month for this access to the software, regardless of how many units you have under management, right? Cozy's free. You want to scale into something that's a bigger software like Appfolio's. I think $250 a month is their minimum when I was looking at it or when I was using it. And so if you've got 2 units, that $250 a month could be half your cash flow. And you don't want to give that much up. But once you get into the double digits and that, then you can start looking at softwares. We have experience with those. We never tried Buildium, but we now that we're into larger apartment buildings and things like that, we try and push the PMs over to Yardi because we find that Yardi is more of a corporate level, apartment building level management software. It can be very expensive, but for that many units, it gets spread out across the lot, so it's worth it. So I find that Yardi is one you should look to graduate to as you get the portfolio big enough. Start with Cozy, and then there's a few stepping stones you can use in between to scale up. So hope that helps, Aaron. Okay. Rachel, newbie here. Welcome, newbie. It's okay. We're all newbies. Me and Chad both were newbies.
We've all been there.
We've all been there, man. We're grateful to help. That's why we're here. What's the best resource to find a market to invest in? That's an interesting one. Chad, you want to go there? What do you think?
I mean, BP Insights is looking pretty cool right now with a lot of the analysis there. I've been checking their articles out, and kind of the top markets for cash flow. That's one resource, obviously, because we're bigger pockets here. But also, I use Zillow a lot just to just do some really quick analysis and looking at a couple of things like in the big picture of a market. When I'm looking at investing out of the area or helping somebody else do that, I want to look at the big picture population and demographics. That's kind of the most important thing for a region itself, because if population increases and if they have good jobs, then that tends to help us, whether we're flipping houses, renting houses, whatever. So you want to start off there. And most big metropolitan areas are pretty good, but you can look at the rankings of different areas at different sites. But then once you're trying to find a location within a city, it's really interesting. I think it gets much more intuitive and it gets much more personal for you, because really what you're trying to do is find a neighborhood, find a street, find a part of town that has some appeal, that has some demand. And you have to kind of put your renter or your buyer hat on and just think like they do and say, what parks, what public transportation, what amenities do people want to live close to? And and I actually make a Google map and I like circle areas and say, all right, this is an A area. This is where everybody wants to be. And then you try to find little pockets that have the same qualities as the best locations, but you can buy them on a budget. You can buy them a little bit more affordably. And so I think there's a lot of nuance to that, but I think going from the big picture and then zooming all the way down to the kind of street by street level is what you got to do.
I love that. That's great market tips. I just to pile onto that, a few more resources that are out there. I would consider Neighborhood Scout. If you guys have a Bigger Pockets Pro membership, you guys can get a great discount on Neighborhood Scout. We use Neighborhood Scout in my business for our analysis of markets for apartment buildings. And you can use it for analysis on any size deal, really, because Neighborhood Scout gives the local, you can get crime stats, you can get micro demographics, meaning like, what's the median income and what are the, what's job growth look like? We like to see job diversity. I don't want to see a town that's all reliant upon whatever it is, oil and gas or tech or whatever, because a certain industry can see a dip, but unless you've got a crazy big recession, which we may be going into, who knows, you may see a dip across the board, but you're not going to see one industry's not going to own a market. You don't have to rely on that one industry to come back to bring that market back. So I like diversity of employment. And that's a Neighborhood Scout's a good one. If you guys have a Bigger Pockets Pro membership, then you can get get a big discount on Neighborhood Scout. That's my 2 cents. Super personal one here, man. I love it though. And not too much though, Chad. I'll throw it out there. Where in Ecuador did you live, and would you invest there? What do you think?
Okay, cool. Yeah, we were in Cuenca, Ecuador. So this person's probably familiar with Ecuador,
That's a cool name.
Yeah, Cuenca, Ecuador means a bowl, and it's basically up in the 8,000 feet up in the Andes Mountains, and it's a really beautiful place. And the cool thing about Ecuador, I'm going to sell Ecuador here for a minute, is that it's on the equator. That's what Ecuador means. But it's also a lot of the places you live there are really high up, so you have this basically, consistent temperature year round. 50 to 70 degrees is where we were in Cuenca, and it's an old colonial city with a lot of beautiful architecture. So the reason we did that, and this kind of goes back to the retirement question too, of not waiting until you're 70, 80 years old to retire, is actually like live some of this stuff right now. And for us, it was, traveling and learning a foreign language. My wife teaches Spanish. And so we lived there for 17 months and we lived in an apartment, and our kids went to local schools in Ecuador and Cuenca. And so it was really cool. We got to, they after probably 6 months, they had about 5 or 6 words to start. I had a head start on them. My wife's really good at Spanish, and they would come home and we'd have dinner with each other, and they say, "Papa, no se dice eso." And they would correct my Spanish and tell me how bad my pronunciation was. And it was amazing. I loved it.
That's
because
awesome.
my little kids were, just kind of accelerating their learning. And so
now, were you getting a real estate, you were running your real estate business from there, here? Okay.
Yeah.
Follow-up question the Angel had, would you invest in Ecuador?
I personally, I'm not opposed to it if I was there permanently, but I like investing in the U.S. I think it's, I think this goes back to our kind of question about whether you should invest in crowdfunding and other things. I think the Warren Buffett phrase of "you should always invest in what you understand" is a really important thing. And so I think there's opportunities in Ecuador, there's opportunities in Panama, there's opportunities in other parts of Latin America, but I understand the system, the contracts, the legal title issues, and which is really the fundamentals of real estate. I don't understand them as well in Ecuador. And there's been a lot of changes over the years, and it's much more stable. All the rules are different.
All the rules are different overseas. And there's like simple concepts. Like here you have to pay real estate taxes to maintain your property and everything like that. In other countries, there is no such thing as real estate taxes. But there's many other rules, and the sovereignty of that country is even at question. Not of Ecuador specifically, but like if there's a regime change, they could say, "Oh, all real estate now becomes the property of the new government," or whatever it is.
Especially for international people, if you're not a citizen of that country, you're not.
We're not going to abide by your little LLC rules. That's not going to work. I'm not saying that's true everywhere, but I mean, just I believe, and there's people that own overseas, so there's a lot more you can learn on that. That's a great question for the Bigger Pockets forums on which countries cities you may want to own in versus ones you might not want to own in. But that's awesome. When you were in Ecuador, was it were you guys doing like mission-based work, or was it just to travel and have the kids learn Spanish and experience the world a bit?
It's more of a personal experience. Yeah, we just wanted the family experience. And also this kind of goes back to, all of us in real estate investing are pretty good goal setters. I think if you're watching this thing today, you're kind of a go-getter. Well, that's definitely how I saw myself. I was a climber. I'm really pushing hard. And for me, it was more, hey, let's just take a break. Let's take a mini retirement. Let's kind of press pause button for a little while. I actually wrote the book while I was there, so I didn't completely pause. But it's just more of a, for us, it's just more of a, like, let's live those things that we dream about having one of those days and not wait 20 years in the future. Like, let's do it right now. And it was not easy with the real estate business. We had to systematize a lot of things. We had to hire people to do a lot of the things that I was doing. But that's part of the point. If you kind of force the issue, you go all in poker and say, hey, I'm all in on this early retirement thing. And it makes you build your business around your lifestyle instead of having the business drive your lifestyle the other way around.
Yeah. Well, it makes you look to folks like Brandon Turner, that, people are like, well, okay, I'll move to Hawaii when I retire. The guy's like, no, I'll move to Hawaii in my 30s, and I'll be able to live some of retirement now. Listen, you don't have to move to Hawaii. You don't have to move to Ecuador. But there is, those of you guys watching, if you want to start taking steps towards retirement that Chad talks about in his book, there are steps you can take now that will carry you closer to retirement. I'm working right now on, this is like pre-COVID, COVID kind of expedited this thing. But I was working on dropping my work day down from 5 days a week down to 4 days a week. Right. And because of COVID, and because my wife has a thriving business also, I'm kind of down to 3.5 days a week, and trying to get closer to 3 as well, only because of, job sharing with the kids and everything like that. But that's been an interesting transition, and it's forced me to work harder during the work times, but put things away more during the not work times. So that's the big lesson that's out there for you guys watching. You don't have to be 65 to begin the retirement conversation. You can start. I don't care if you're 22. Start thinking about things you could do that you would do when you're like that. Maybe that's a good exercise, Chad. What do you think about this? I'll make it up. Make a list of things you'd love to do when you're retired. Make that bucket list. Here's everything I want to do. And then look at that list again and say, what are things I can do now? And what are things I could make some life shifts to do in the next 1 to 2 years? What do you think about that? Maybe it's a good challenge for everybody here.
Yeah, like put it in the chat. Like, let us know, like, what do you want to do? What matters to you? And then also to Matt's point, like, you don't have to wait for some of these. Like, which one of, like, if you make that list and you rank it, you have 1 to 15, which one of those things that even before you get $1 million in real estate, or even before you have 20 properties, like just having a cash reserve in the bank and having $500 a month coming in from your rental property, like that might give you enough confidence to say, you know what, I'm going to go from this job that I really don't like, that makes $120,000 a year, and I'm going to go to this job I love that makes $80,000 a year, because that's what I want to do, and because life's too short. And
then you're able to peel back some of your lifestyle, and maybe not live full tilt at your means. Maybe you like learn to do something crazy, which we don't do too much in America, which is crazy. Live below your means. Whoa, there's a such thing, right? No, but maybe most people live above their means. But if you live at or below your means, you're able to make decisions that are more lifestyle-based decisions, which is what it's really all about. There's a book called Life in Air, phenomenal book. Check it out. That I highlight. Brandon's recommended it a bunch of times in the podcast. A few more questions before we get to jump here. Matt wants to know, what are your top 3 market picks in terms of balanced opportunities between yield growth right now in the U.S.? I'll even boil it down, Chad. What markets are you shopping right now?
I'm a local investor, so I'll just put that out there. Like, it's not that I wouldn't go long distance, but I have a good market in Clemson, South Carolina. But there's a book that I want to recommend that talks about not just markets in specific, but also the general long-term trends of where people are moving that I think will be helpful. And it's called Big Shifts Ahead. It's the guy who wrote it, John. I can't remember his last name, but anyway, he's a real estate consultant to builders and big hedge funds. And one of the trends I think we all need to be looking at is the demographic trends from the big cities, the East Coast, to the South, not only the Southeast, but also to the Southwest, and out of the big cities to the medium-sized cities and the metro areas. Because one of the big trends is you have the millennials, which are as big as the baby boomer generation. And they are, in the past, they've lived in urban areas because that's kind of a cool place to live. They had public transit. It was walkable. Well, as they start forming families, as they start trying to buy houses, they're not affordable in the big cities. And so they're moving to areas that have big city-like qualities, but they also are more affordable. And so you find a lot of these in either small towns or medium-sized cities that are also kind of within shooting distance of the big cities. They can drive to them, they can commute there, but they have those little walkable qualities. So that's what I'm high on these days. Like my family, I grew up in Noonan, Georgia. That's just one example. It's a metro of Atlanta. It has a little town center. There's little breweries going on in the town. There's little apartments coming up. This is a county of 120,000 people, a city with 30, 40,000 people. That's an amazing little investing opportunity. And those are all over the place. If you start with big economic centers with diverse jobs, and then you look for the little metro area, in this book, they called them suburban locations. So they're just suburban, urban locations. And so wherever you find those, I don't know there's a lot of specific places you can look, but I think if you look for suburban locations towards the south where there's more people moving and jobs are moving, I think that's a good trend.
It's brilliant. Yeah, great advice. Thank you. Few more. So Jamie's got more of an accounting-based question here, but I'll throw it out there to you, Chad, because I bet you can handle it. I'm selling a rental property. First of all, congratulations, Jamie. Should I hang on to the cash for the upcoming recession? Someone mentioned an alternative to a 1031. That's called a Delaware Statutory Trust, a DST. Jamie, that's what that is. It's crazy complicated, well above my knowledge base, but that's something you could look into.
Mine too.
DST and that. I don't know if Chad and I will touch that third rail on that one. You can go ahead and look into that. Also, would you invest in an existing property management business with 300 plus doors? A lot to unpack there, Chad. Why don't you jump on what you want there? But again, let's start with first selling a rental property. Would you keep the cash? Or would you parlay it, given what we may be going into, whatever? Would you keep the cash? Would you parlay it into 1031?
I think it's less about the market right now, although I would like to have some cash going into this market. I think it's more about the property. I think it's about your strategy. It's kind of a depends question. Responses are never good, but it's like it really does depend on that property, because if you have a huge gain on that property and you're going to pay a mega tax bill on it, and it's a large amount of money, I'm going to be looking 1031 if I can. But I've only done a couple 1031s, and my strategy has been more to find the property that I want to buy ahead of time and get like an option on that property, a lease option, kind of try to control that property first. Then you go and try to time the sale of that. And so you can then not have to go searching around looking for properties. And so if I found a good deal, I could get it under contract, and then I could also sell it and time that up. There's a lot of ifs there. Then that can make a lot of sense.
That's a good idea. I never thought of doing that, of doing a 1031. Find what you want for it. Now, again, there's something called a reverse 1031, which is crackalacky complicated. It's possible, but complicated. But doing a lease option on a property you want to buy. In that note, so Jamie, to your thought, if you buy a property that has a lot of equity in it, what you could do is, I've seen people do this, buy the property on the 1031. It's got to be worth a little bit more. There's a lot of rules and parameters. So abide by all the rules that are there. And then buy it, put a lot of equity that you pull out of your sale into the new property, let it season for a couple of months, and then refinance it, because rates are so low right now. You can refinance it, pull a lot of that cash out tax-free, and then go and invest in something like that. Again, I don't know what I could offer on this one, but what would you invest in an existing property management business with 300 plus doors? What do you think, Chad?
I mean, I'm personally not interested. No, I'm kind of a simple investor. I don't mind buying businesses, but for me, this goes back to the retirement question too. I want to keep my life. I want to own the number of properties, the least number of properties I can, to accomplish whatever my personal life goals are. And owning another business where I have to operate it and manage it and do all that, at this point in my career, is just not what I want to do. I would rather own, I have a list of properties that we own. And right now we're looking at it we'll try to sell a few properties that we have to replace them with better properties, and continue doing that. And just to the point where we have all the properties we want, we would love to keep and continue owning. That's more where I am. But growing and buying another business and having to manage it, maybe that's right for somebody if they're trying to get into a market and they got a lot of capital. But management business, I would rather build my own management business personally. Even if in that case, I think you could hustle, and within a year or so starts go out and try to market to a lot of the owners and build it up that way.
Here's my 2 cents, Jamie. 300 is a weird number. owning a property management company, as Chad and I both did separately. I can tell you that property management companies don't make much money at 1, 2, 3, 400. I mean, I can tell you probably weren't making retirement salary on 100 doors that you're managing yourself. It's just not something that it's just not a lucrative business at that level. Now, I've heard and seen PM companies really thrive above 1,000 doors. And so if you want to get in, buy it and roll your sleeves up, it's not going to be a passive business anytime soon. That if you think you got what it takes, buy it and build it to 1,000 units. Then you can take it and sell it or recapitalize it at some point once you get it over 1,000 doors. But that is a grind, my friend. Property management is a thankless business. It can be lucrative. It's a necessary evil in our world. But just it's a thankless business that I'm glad I'm not doing anymore. You can tell I don't have much affinity. I don't have much affinity for PM businesses, and you couldn't give me a PM company right now. So,
neither.
A few more questions and we got to jump. Clyde wanted to know, I don't know, I'm not renovating a triplex, and maybe you are. How's that triplex reno going right now?
Yeah, this is an inside joke. This is an inside joke. So Clyde is my property manager and project manager on this one. So I need to turn around and ask him the question, like, how is that triplex renovation?
Right. Yeah. Clyde, Clyde. Quit busting Chads. You know what's, man. How's it going? Okay, next one. Cameron, what's the best advice you would give to oh my goodness, I love these questions, Chad. This is the the core, man. I love it. I love it. First of all, Cameroon, thank you for being interested in this kind of thing at your age. I commend you. I think it's awesome. I wish I had any type of affinity for it. And I hope and pray that my 6-year-old son has your level of interest in this thing when he's 13. So awesome. Chad, take it away, man. What advice you got for a 13-year-old trying to get rental and real estate business? Yeah.
I mean, part of me just wants to say, I mean, who do you have investing with you? Like, are you have another person who's going to help you out? Can you buy it with them? I'll give you an analogy. I wasn't 13 when I started. I was 23, but I graduated from college. I didn't have any business experience. And so what I had to do is, you have this entire real estate business. There's all sorts of different ways you can get into it. You have to pick one tiny little slice of the business and figure out how to get good at that piece of the business so that you can add value to the people who have all you don't have. And so let me give you my exact example. I got really good at finding deals when I was 23 years old. And I was basically a bird dog, is a Southern term, it's where you go out and you point to deals for other people, but you don't have the money. You don't know how to buy it. You're not even wholesaling it. You're just saying, hey, here's a deal. And you have to have a license typically to do that. So I'm not sure what the rules are on licensing, what ages those are, but you could go out and point to deals for people, look for vacant properties, walk around neighborhoods, ride your bike around a neighborhood, get some exercise, just make a list of like 30 properties that are fixer-uppers and vacant, and then have 1 or 2 investors that you take those to, and they buy the property, they come up with the money, and then you are able to participate with them somehow, either through a fee, through a partnership. I think that would be my approach, is you got to find some key strategic partners and then figure out a way to add value to them just from the get-go.
Love it. I love it. Thank you. One more time, Cameron. Thank you for your interest. I commend you. I think that I would not get discouraged and not anybody tell you that you can't do it because of your age. That's what you're going to get. And I would smack back and push back and keep pushing and finding a way through it. And that you might have to find things. I would also recommend, like, maybe find a way to work on a construction site as a helper to learn the nuts and bolts of real estate on the construction side. Bird dog deals, as Chad said, or just offer assistance to those that are more established, and find yourself a mentor locally in your market. If you don't have one now, find one local. Last question here from John. As a wholesaler, the best option, I think, to build cash and to build property position is for my first property. How should I wholesale on the recession? What are some strengths and weaknesses you see? Chad, are you much of a wholesaler?
I did in the last recession. I'm a buy and hold investor now. So we're not actively doing it, but I was very much in the business of wholesaling for the first 4 or 5 years of my business.
What do you think? How do you think wholesaling? What do you think wholesaling plays going into a recession? What do you think a wholesaler's place is going to be in this new market?
I mean, I think it always has a lot of value because if you're really going out and digging up those deals, kind of like we were talking to Cameron about, you're the one out beating the streets, talking to people, putting deals under contract, and you're really buying deals that have value. Then it doesn't matter the market. I mean, the thing that's gonna be hard now is going to be pricing things correctly. And so I would be on the phone with my buyers list, talking to my key buyers, my top buyers, and say, hey, what are you guys or you gals? What are y'all? How's your strategy approach changing? What are your, are you buying? What prices are you looking at? What are your formulas? Like the key to being a wholesaler is pretty simple business model in some ways. You're just finding deals and then you're selling them for a higher price to somebody else. But the whole key is that buyer, like those investor buyers and what they're doing and how they're approaching it. So you just got to mirror exactly what they're doing. And as long as there's investors buying properties, you can always be in the wholesaling business. You just got to adapt. You got to change.
Yeah, it's going to be too soon to start getting into short sales or trying to find properties that are like post-COVID level distressed. I think you're going to see any of those probably towards the end of this year, maybe early next. So things that are really like fallout level properties. But you can still find distressed owners. Distressed owners are going to be more distressed now because of COVID. So if you can find a distressed owner, then jump in. Facebook is blowing up with advice for our 13-year-old friend, man. That's so inspiring to see community people jump in to help this guy. So Cameron, if you're watching, a 13-year-old friend, read on the Facebook feed on Bigger Pockets. There's a bunch of folks blowing up trying to give you advice here, and I commend you guys for helping out, because you guys probably transposed and see yourself at 13 trying to help this guy. So listen, guys, that's our hour. That's our hour show, man. So that was awesome, Chad. As always, the show goes a lot faster than I think that it. That's the fastest hour of my week right here. You know,
that's right. It's fun. Yeah. I mean, hearing everybody's feedback and questions and knowing what's on your mind. I mean, I think that's a lot of fun for me. So thank you, Matt, for having me on.
Go brain picking, man. Listen, guys, I think we need to have Chad back. If you guys would all agree, if you guys agree with that, please on Facebook or on YouTube, give this video a thumbs up right now so I can see that you guys want to see Chad back on. So give it some thumbs up, give it some love. If you're on Facebook, give it some hearts. And that now, Chad, I'd like to ask you guys to do a big favor because we've got a bunch of questions coming in. If you guys have further questions, type them in on Facebook. Chad, will you do us all a huge favor and jump onto Facebook in like an hour, whatever you can, like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and type in some answers to some of these folks so they can keep picking your brain and access the knowledge you've been offering to the Bigger Pockets community. Would you be so kind as to do that?
Love to do it. I'd be happy to do it. Y'all just put them in the chat and I'll be there in an hour or two. I
really appreciate you doing that because that's just what it is. That's what you and I do as contributors to the Bigger Pockets community. We give back. I give to the Matt Faircloth 15 years ago that there was no Bigger Pockets going when I was back there. I wasn't aware of it, just like you. When did you get started, by the way? What year?
2003. So graduated college 2002 and got right in about the same as you, I think. We were
I'm 98. But yes, we were right around the same age, right around the same graduation year, and got in pretty soon afterwards. So cool. Hey, listen, this is great. Chad, how do people get a hold of you? They want to hear more about you, either through Bigger Pockets or through other means. How do people get a hold of you to hear more about what Chad Carson's up to?
Yeah, well, definitely check out the book I mentioned earlier. That's a Bigger Pockets book. You can get that on the Bigger Pockets store, Retire Early with Real Estate. And then I write weekly. I have a blog and a podcast over at coachcarson.com. So if you want to hang out with me there, I'm on Bigger Pockets a lot too. I'm going to be contributing more there as well. But just let me know and get in touch with me at coachcarson.com and would love to stay in touch that way.
Awesome. CoachCarson.com. Listen, Facebook, keep those questions coming. Those watching on YouTube and Facebook, this video will be archived here so y'all can watch it later. You guys can watch from the beginning, watch the whole thing, because Chad and I just jumped in and started laying the nuggets down in the very beginning of this thing. So if you guys got in towards the middle, you got to do yourself the favor, rewind this thing and get out your pad and paper and take some notes and watch this from the beginning. We're taking next Monday off, guys, because I want y'all to enjoy your Memorial Day and not worry about stopping your barbecue so you can watch Matt Faircloth live on Facebook and on YouTube. So enjoy your time and your social distancing time with family and enjoy your Memorial Day. 2 weeks from today, I'm going to be coming on live with Ashley Wilson, who is a Bigger Pockets contributor, written a ton of blog posts. She is an apartment building syndicator and a flipper. And that's a really interesting conversation because Ashley's done a ton of high-end flips. I'll see if she can bring on some photos of some of the flips that she's done before and after that she can screen share and show us what she's done. And then also she's done a bunch of apartment building turns. So a lot of what she can offer up is just that mindset that it takes to manage contractors and everything that it takes in the world of construction, both on multi and on flips. I cannot wait for that conversation because contractor management is something I've never been able to do. I actually joke, Chad, sometimes that there are human beings and then there are contractors, There's just two different. There's just difference from a different planet, from planet
it's
contractor.
Hard. It's hard for sure. I agree.
It is.
I'm not like a B. I give myself a B- in that category.
I do too. I'd have to have somebody else do it. That's why I have to have people like Ashley go and browbeat them for me. So come join us then, guys. Come see us and keep those comments coming that Chad will address for you guys in an hour or two on Facebook. Chad, thank you for your time. I know you're busy with family and business and everything, so I appreciate you spending the hour with us today.
Thank you for the invite. Great to see you, and I hope to see you in person once we get back to these in-person meetings.
We'll do it to it, man. Cool. Guys, thank you for watching. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks.